So what do evil cultists, deck building, and stance dance revolution have in common? They're all part of Spire. I first bought the game way back in early access, and it was a lot simpler back then. There's no secret boss, only 2 playable classes, and even back then it was worth every penny. Since then the game's expanded considerably. I've put hundreds of hours into Spire, mastering my favorite class, the and playing around with various mods from the Steam Workshop, some of which are very fun, and others of which are very unbalanced. Don't let the game's simple presentation and graphical style fool you. Spire offers a ton of depth with straightforward and easy to understand, yet maddeningly difficult to master game mechanics. Like with most roguelites, Spire is broken down into various runs. You'll pick your character, be given a starting deck, and you attempt to slay your way to the top of Spire. As you go, you encounter rooms with enemies you must defeat, random events, and shops where you can buy various things, or sometimes treasure chests, which reward you with powerful relics. At the end of each stage, you'll fight a boss that offers a special boss relic and some rare cards to hopefully add to your deck. In battle, you'll always be able to see the actions above the enemies' heads, which is really cool. You know your resources, the cards in your hand, and you know what the enemies are going to do, and from that point you have to puzzle out the solution to dealing with them in the most effective manner possible. Cards are broken down into 3 basic types: attacks, which generally deal damage; skills, which are often used to gain block, preventing damage dealt to you; and powers, which give you permanent effects. For example, a power might be you have increased strength now. You'll have that for the rest of the battle because you played the card. As you defeat foes, you add cards to your deck, and this is where Spire truly begins to shine. It's not as simple as adding every card you get to your deck. Each class has its own unique mechanics, and they're kind of based off of traditional roles in RPGs. The is a rogue who specializes in avoiding damage and cycling cards. She's very good at poisoning and has a lot of small hits. On the other hand, the Ironclad is your typical warrior type. He hits hard, piles on the block, and heals himself. Or you could play the Defect, who is a weird robot wizard, whose powers focus on orbs, a mechanic that has a passive that triggers every turn, or a lot of really neat powers. And finally there's the Watcher, a combo-based monk class, where you dance between the Calm stance, that gives you energy when you leave it, the Wrath stance, which causes you to deal and take double damage, and the Divinity stance, which refills your energy and gives you triple damage, but is a lot harder to access. Within each of these classes, there's a lot of different archetypes to find, and these are all based on card synergies, so runs will feel very different based on the choices you're given. You might choose certain cards in the first run that you won't want in the second, and a relic could completely change the gameplay around your deck. And if this isn't enough customization for you, well, don't worry, Spire fully supports mods, so if you want to play an anime-themed version, well, you can. Like with all roguelikes, the game doesn't end when you win. It also doesn't end when you lose. At the end of a given run, you're free to go ahead and face new challenges with a new deck. Because everything's randomized, you'll start with different synergies from your early cards and relics, which changes how you play the game, and it changes how you deal with certain enemies. One run, you might come across a build that gives you a lot of block, so you turtle and you tank, and you don't really have to worry about what the enemy's doing as long as they're not inflicting statuses on you. Whereas in another, you might make a deck that cycles through very quickly. You draw a lot of cards, you have an incredibly small deck, and you have very high damage output. But it might all hinge on going into Wrath stance, where you need to know you're going to kill the enemy, because if you don't, they will kill you afterwards. I'm a big fan of card games, and I played Magic the Gathering for years. I love the synergies, and I love the deck building. And it feels like Spire is one of those pivotal games which has gone on to create its own subgenre. We've seen so much hype around games like Monster Train or Loop Hero, and I can't help but feel like Spire inspired both of those. As of the time of making this video, I've played it for about 275 hours, and I still hop on to do a daily run, mess around with some mods, or just work on some Ascensions. This is not an easy game. You're probably going to lose several of the runs before you win them. And if you're the sort of person who wants to have an easy breezy time with what they play, then this probably isn't the game for you. Spire's a turn-based game, but it feels far more interactive than a lot of the menu-based, turn-based games I've played in the past. I don't so much sit there going, alright, well, I'm going to use my attack, and then the enemy's going to use their attack, then I'm going to go back to mine. Because it brings in the strategic elements of a card game. I'm thinking about, alright, these are the resources in my hand, this is how much energy I have to spend, and this is what I know is in my deck. I haven't seen these cards yet, I have 8 cards left. There's a good chance I'll draw this in my next turn. Maybe I set up for something, and maybe I play a little defensive here. Or similarly, I might say, oh, well, that enemy's going to do something really dangerous. Alright, what do I have? What are all my extra resources? I've been holding onto this card since the start of a game. I can only use it once in a round. I'm going to use it here. It is my trump card, and hopefully this gets me through the turn. All of this adds a sense of action that you wouldn't really find in a turn-based game normally. And it also ties into the fact that, again, the game is challenging. If you find the normal mode too easy, then you can do what's called Ascension, which is essentially a difficulty modifier that scales up harder and harder and harder. You stop healing after every boss fight, you take penalties, and the enemies become way scarier. And this is where I got to 275 hours played before I even realized it. Now, if anything about Slay the Spire that I've said here really resonates with you, and you want to give the game a shot, it is available on Steam. You can also purchase it through my Nexus page, which will be down in the description below. When you do, it should be roughly the same price as the Steam version, at least for people who are buying in US dollars, but a portion of your purchase will be going to directly support me. I normally don't back Kickstarters, and I normally don't buy games in early access, but when it comes to Slay the Spire, I'm very glad I did. It is truly an indie gem, and a game that I feel hasn't gotten enough attention. I'm always looking for new things to play. What are some of your favorite indie gems? What games would you like to see me review on this channel? Let me know down in the comments below, along with any Slay the Spire tips and tricks that you happen to pick up if you do end up buying the game. Thank you for watching, and again, a special thanks to my patrons and YouTube channel members. If you want to support me, you can do so by clicking the links down in the description below or on screen right now. You can also support by making purchases through my Nexus page. Or if you just want to chill and hang out, be sure to join the Discord. Again, links for everything are down in the description below. Thank you, and have a great day.